Yeah, and like I said, I'm on the clock.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. I'm here with my boys PD and Kyle. Say what's up, guys.
What's going on?
Ready to rock.
Okay, so the news is that the DC Marvel Omnibus and DC Marvel amalgam, they're going to have some delays. They've already been having delays, and they're going to continue to have delays. But the amalgam is not going to be seen until hopefully January, while the Marvel DC should come out at the end of October. Hopefully, there's no more delays. So the key thing I'm asking you guys is like, what the heck is going on? Why does this keep happening? Is there something? Is there some type of wild kind of conspiracy that we need to like find out that's going on with DC and Marvel? So, P, what's your thought on this?
Why are you going to me on this?
Well, because I know Cal has a lot to say, but before we
So
get to him,
let's have Cal has a lot to say. Start it off, please.
How do we know that Cal has a lot to say? Why are we being so
because
presumptive?
Cal always has a lot to say.
Well, this is true. So, bottom line with these particular things is that, hey, we have two different companies that are having to work together in order to produce this. Marvel versus DC, you have to remember, okay? Petey will definitely agree with me. Marvel versus DC happened primarily because comic books weren't selling that well in the 90s. Okay, so all those mashups, not mashups, but all those crossovers, all those team ups we saw, those intercompany team ups that we saw, were ways to generate sales overall. So that was one of the bigger things happen. Once sales kind of stabilized, we haven't seen that. Okay, that was a one-time thing. That was a golden age of crossovers, and so we have those particular stories that come out of it. So it's not this regular thing. And working intercompany is not an easy thing to do. Now you also have to think about, okay, cut of money, who's getting what. And amalgam is a different animal altogether than the DC versus Marvel stuff because both companies own amalgam. But that was done again back in the 90s when both companies were, you guessed it, independent companies. Okay, Marvel is no longer the Marvel that it was of the 90s, and Warner's Brothers been sold what, two, three times over at this point. So
Yeah,
now you've got to go over here. You got to sort all this stuff out. Everybody needs to make certain that they're going to get the right cut of money. How's it going to be, how it's going to be produced? Okay. Those particular things are going to come into play, and we already talked about this, off stage. There's only likely to be one printing. There's only likely to be one printing of these books. So this is one shot. Okay, this is the last call for alcohol. It's got to be right. There's not going to be a return. If somebody opens up the book and the book starts falling apart at the gutter, that's it. They're not going to. Oh, we'll send them back. We'll do a reprinting. No, this is a one shot thing. So all of those things are on the table, and all the things have to be worked out because again, it's going to be one time, so it's got to be done right. That's at least what I'm. Those are some of the logistics that I know have to be on the table, and if they're pushing things back, they really want to make sure that this is done right the first time because it's only going to be the first time. There's not going to be a second printing.
The only thing I would add is in the '90s, though there was like in the mid '90s when that came out with like '95, um, sales had dipped and dipped from the millions, but it wasn't what we're at now. But they were they're also chasing that $1 million number, and they would do anything. That's how we got Heroes Reborn. They would doing anything to get those numbers back. So, and Marvel and DC, we hadn't had a what did they have? They hadn't had anything together really since what was it? Good lord. I guess when the Spawn thing happened, that's when it started. Spawn had done their crossover and with Batman, and then people started opening up the books, and then Marvel and DC said, "Screw you, Image guys. We can do it ourselves." He's like, "You guys are dipping the toe in with us," and this, and then of course Marvel, of course, did a bunch of crossovers with them anyway. So did some stuff with Heroes Reborn. They did some crossovers. So, but yeah, definitely agree. It's I think because the Marvel and DC, the classic crossovers were done so well, and I'll add people go into the fight of Batman and the Hulk. That is a gorgeous book. The Superman, Spider Man's, the X Men, Titans. the ones we didn't even get in the JLA, the first JLA. But then we got the mashup of the heroes fighting where the people called in, but we got Amalgam, which was so amazing. I don't say pick up every one of them, but the books I liked, they were amazing. They were all good.
Yeah, I think just to chime in with what you were saying, the last it almost escaped me, but the last Marvel DC crossover was, you guessed it, JLA Avengers. So there hasn't been a crossover for that's what, 20, 21 years?
Yeah, it was, and other I would add in there Marvel after Marvel started the when Joe Quesada said I like when Marvel and DC didn't like each other, but they let the JLA Avengers thing happen. But then after that, they were like, open up the books again, bend this once in, and DC's like, no, we're not doing it for until maybe a regime change on that one, but we're not. So no, you got me, you got Bendis, and possibly doing Batman and whoever from Marvel. Oh no, I think it was a Daredevil thing, but in my mind, I think it was first was Wolverine, but it probably was Daredevil, and he was really gunning for it. They went to the fans, and it didn't happen. But it'd definitely be fun. It's like one of those books that that you definitely if you get because they had one in the past. It doesn't have all the new stuff in it, so getting some of those amalgam books would be nice in there. So. I can't say much about outside though was the Claudio Colostini. That dude, his art is amazing. Even though they had him with some of the worst stories ever, the art there was pretty amazing. So I had to point that out.
I mean, that's kind of interesting because I've heard by some people saying that the amalgam stories really were not all that good. So I mean, is it worth? Everybody wants to see the DC Marvel stuff, but the amalgam stuff, is it really such a thing that people want to see? I mean, because first of all, these characters are never going to show up again. They're only one-offs. Am I correct?
What, the Amalgam characters?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, that's a very good question because do you guys remember the Malibu universe?
yes.
Yeah, because the Malibu universe came on the scene, people liked it, and then eventually Marvel ended up acquiring it. We've never seen those characters again. Same thing where I think Disney acquired all of the cross-gen characters, and it's almost like they acquired them for them to die. We're never going to see them again. So those are characters that look like they just wanted to absorb them so nobody else had them, and so nothing could be done with these characters. But now you got characters that actually belong to the two companies, and there doesn't really seem to be an interest to do anything with them outside of what was already done. The logistics on it could just be very, very intricate in order to get something like that off the ground. But if the desire to do it was there, I'm sure they could get it done. So I think that's a very interesting question. I'm probably going to lean with no. We're probably not going to see anything with those characters unless things get so bad. There's a movie, and it'd be, hey, JLA Avengers, the movie. This time we really needed that. That sort of thing. And then maybe, something like that gets snuck in. But otherwise, yeah, I think those were characters specifically for that particular storyline. And they don't really have a reason to exist outside of that storyline.
Interesting. I wonder, but you have like DC, the Authority, right? Not the Authority, Wildcats, right? Which is published with Jim Lee Studio or Jim Lee's characters, and yet they're pushing that on in DC.
They're not pushing it; they're slipping it in from time to time when Jim Lee thinks about it. He's like, "Hey, can we throw Grifter in here somewhere?" And Grifter shows up for some strange reason. Hey, it's Grifter with that guy with the cowboy mask that covers your eyes, that sort of thing.
I mean, they could do something, and DC's also did Milestone too, right? So they integrated that. Well, no, that was always a DC imprint, right? So not quite the same.
I don't know why. I don't know why not. I mean, some of those characters, looks wise, I don't think story wise, but slipping in like who's those guys? Wetworks, The guys in the golden outfits and whatnot, guns. They got a lot of mercenaries. The stuff that used to work for the X-Men, they got a lot of those characters, even though they're supposed to be on the side of the good. But who was it? Let's see. So let me get this straight. So to make sure I'm saying this right, this new one is gonna have all the crossovers and the amalgam stuff, or is it just gonna be the amalgam stuff? What
Going to
is?
be two things. One is going to be the DC Marvel, the classic ones. You know, the X Men versus Teen Titans. You know, the Avengers versus JLA. That's going to be one volume. The other volume is going to be the amalgam. I mean, I tell you, I've never read the amalgam, so I have no idea about them.
You didn't read it?
No.
What were you doing?
I'm not reading it. It just seemed just weird.
Hope you have a good read. Hope you have a. Are you kidding me? Well, I can't say that was the best part of the series. I enjoyed it overall, but where I think some of the pros, where they were kind of like, whatever, this is like, cash grab. But a lot of those guys were open to it. They were like, hey, this was actually a lot of fun with the mashups of these characters. And there were some of the stories, some of the stories were good. And the ones that were more popular actually had, I think, Dark Claw. No, I think one of them got had three different offerings. I don't think it was Dark Claw, but some of the more popular ones, they had that initial run, and then there was a second book. There was a second book put out, maybe even as much as a third, because they were still very much, I mean, it was successful. People liked it, and I know they did at least three with that whole Access limited series. So they had Access, All Access, and then one more. So I mean, you can only do mashups so far at the end of the day, but I thought they did a pretty good job with the ones that they decided. I mean, you have the ones that are, the low hanging fruit, like Captain America and Superman, but the Wolverine Batman one, I thought that was interesting. Storm, Wonder Woman, but those.
Bruce Wayne Agent. What about Bruce Wayne Agent of Shield? Huh?
I didn't particularly care for that one.
Doctor Strange Fate.
I didn't care for that one because that was a double dip, because you already had Batman and Wolverine. And so now we have Bruce Wayne, pretty much Nick Fury. So I was kind of like, well, we already, you could have put somebody else. And Bruce Wayne doesn't really come across as a secret agent type character. So that one didn't quite work for me. But, JLX, Lobo Duck, some of the stuff was pretty good.
So wait a second, we got to go back. You called it, I don't know what you mean by low hanging fruit for the super soldier. What do you say about the Superman Captain America?
No, that was just the idea of mashing them up. I thought was, okay, let's take two characters that are, let's do two characters that are pretty similar, and we'll put them together. So, Captain America, Superman, in terms of their morality, in terms of them being, Boy Scouts, if you will, and we put those two together. And they might have done that with a couple of other characters. And then some of the other ones, like, what did they do? Strange Fate? So who did they have with that one? Dr. Fate, Dr. Strange. Low-hanging fruit at the end of the day. Oh, let's take the two magic characters, merge their magical worlds, see what happens. But then but then I also thought they had a couple where, this isn't really like an obvious one. Let's see how this one works. And it turned out to be entertaining. Lobo
Ghost
Duck
Rider and Speed in Flash.
Yeah, and Lobo Duck, was definitely not one where you would see coming. Howard the Duck and Lobo aren't characters that you would think of. I can't imagine anybody thinking of Howard the Duck and Lobo together for any reason. But they were, they went with some of them that were out of the box, and I thought they did a pretty good job of it.
Okay, so that said, what was the comic? What do you think is the comic pro favorite of those books?
The comic pro favorite of all of them?
Yep.
I think Dark Claw is probably the one that I've heard people talk more about.
This is comic pro, not fans. Fans like anything with a bat or claws coming out of it, or a monkey.
Lobo the Duck?
No, that's tough.
Spider-Boy?
The comic pro?
Spider-Boy, Superboy, and Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give up on that one because I can't remember all of them. And I'm probably just going to end up saying Super Soldier.
Super Soldier was the pros' favorite.
What?
So much so, in the year now, even though in actuality, Byrne has no actual issues with Mark Waid. They asked him what was his favorite books of that year, and he's like Super Soldier and Captain America by Waid. And, so the two things Waid did, Byrne like that really liked, but they really like Super Soldier, and the art in that is like, because what's the name? I don't think Dave Gibbons had done superheroes in a while, and just kind of, I think it was a right note. I think it was better than the stuff he did when he was on Green Lantern. The Green Lantern stuff seems a little stiff now, but that Super Soldier stuff, those are my two favorites too. That's why I mentioned that it was all, I was surprised to see them list, when they're in Wizard, they list people's favorites, and I'm like, wow, Super Soldier keeps popping up in these pros' favorite, at least two or three of them. So I was like, wow, that was fun. Which it got, it got a sequel. It got the Secret Soldier, Man of War with the Howling, the mix up the Howling Commandos and the Sergeant Rock crew. So yeah, so no, it was definitely
that was another like low hanging fruit one, Sergeant Rock, and Nick, and the Howling Commandos, that type of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, that type of stuff I liked because those are very. They didn't do it, did they? Did they do like a Fantastic Four Challengers?
Yes, they did. They definitely did. Kiesel do it. They had Kiesel do it.
Yeah. So like again, another just hey, those are the obvious ones. Almost like the new universe was like, let's take the DC characters, make them Marvel, but do them better. And but this was actually done correctly. Yeah. This was actually done correctly. It was done right.
And well, when going back to it, I think, what was it, going back to the X-Men Titans, obviously gorgeous art, fun story. I can't let anyone forget that X-Men, Avengers, X-Men, the second one, the long 12-part series, all it is the X-Titans done wrong. Phoenix comes back, the truth. Sorry, was it Bendis on this? Phoenix comes back, the X-Men side with the Phoenix, and X-Titans, the Titans don't know that the X-Men aren't with the Phoenix. The X-Men are like, oh no, we got to go through this again. Do the Titans fight the X-Men? No, they fight Xavier. It's a fun little fight, and the next thing you know, they meet up, they shake hands, they fight against the Avengers and X-Men are supposed to fight against the Phoenix. The Phoenix realized, yo, I'm messing up everything. I'm actually in love with this dude, and I'm fighting against the world. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm taking out Darkseid. So turns on Darkseid, sends him to the Source Wall, to the creation, sends Darkseid back to creation. So it was, to take that story and turn it into the X-Men joining with the Phoenix and all having Phoenix powers and all, sold their soul for nothing for the, which entity is not Jean. It is not even Jean, but, it worked. We got 12 issues and people still remember it. I put a thing saying that Marvel's ending if they do X-Men versus Avengers, and some dude said, what's wrong with this guy? So, it's like, it's what people want to see. Like this guy down here who works with us. They want to see that. When you don't need it, just call Spider-Man. Spider-Man will just beat up all the X-Men. You don't need all the Avengers.
That's true. Nobody can beat Spidey. Especially not in his own book.
Yeah, they said that there was a plan to make a success of it. They wanted to make a number 2, X-Men Teen Titans, but they never did. I wonder what happened.
They couldn't work together anymore. That's what happened.
Oh, that's a story in and of itself.
You
listen to Rob Liefeld, and not to say that he's not true, he just said that.
Is this a Robservation?
He says that he said that he didn't bring up that. He brought up that all the struggles Shooter had as writer of the second Spider-Man and Superman, where there was a tight deadline, and he was like, hey, I'll get it done. And he said Paul Levitt was like a real stickler. So Shooter was he didn't bring up that stuff to this. I'm just adding to it. In the next one, once the plot was sent off, DC was kind of laissez-faire about it, saying, hey, we'll kind of fix this if it's, we'll make it better. And Shooter kept rejecting their plot, saying, no, this is terrible. All the characters are wrong. And then Prez started working on it. But Prez was fixing the stuff. So they sent the page like, look, this is what's happened. And he's like, okay, yeah, Prez has fixed a lot of stuff. There's still some art correction we can do. It's looking good, but you should have never approved it. I'm not ready to approve the plot. I need at least a couple months before approving it fully. And Perez is like, I'm going to be. he's a twofold. He's mad at DC for letting him start without it being approved, and mad at saying the fans want it. The fans want this. And Shooter's like, no, we need to wait. We need to follow this. I will approve it in 2 months. And if we can't get Perez, we'll get Don Heck. We'll just find someone to do it. So
that's messed up.
Yeah,
that's messed up.
So then Prez didn't know that, Prez, I think, got over it at some point, but he did say he was exclusive for Marvel up until when he did, what's that thing? Infinity Gauntlet. Like, from all that point, he was doing covers for Marvel Fanfare for the Black Widow, and he didn't do that last cover. Art Adams did the last one because he was like, no more Marvel. There's two, you can read it in DC Meanwhile, DC side, and then in Marvel Age, you get Shooter's side. So somewhere in between, obviously DC was wrong without getting approved from Shooter at first, but ultimately comic books are kind of like, hey, let's keep this thing moving. So they, there's a right side on Shooter's side, there's a wrong side for DC, but at the same time, when you see that artwork, hey, they could have fixed it, they could have moved on. So, but it's in the Absolute edition. They have the whole story, both stories.
Interesting. Gotta definitely read that.
Yep. So hey, that's the only reason why this stuff doesn't get done, because when it's intercompany, if they can't get on, that's pretty much the death of the crossover.
Yeah.
That sucks, Tim.
DC wanted to do, well, I don't know how far along they went with this, but there was supposed to be a JLA meets Star Wars. And Alex Ross did some of the preliminary art for it. And I don't think a lot of people got to see the art, but I was like, okay. And, I don't know how they came up with the idea. I forget who had Star Wars at the time. It might have been Dark Horse. Mm-hmm. And then eventually just like that, just never came about because, there was no more communication or, somebody just said no. And that's pretty much the end of it. That's usually what happens. As long as there's enough interest between the both of them, and I know that would have been a really big selling. That would have been a really big selling series at the end of the day. But, it just didn't happen.
What was it?
With some kryptonite lightsabers.
Oh my gosh! When they were doing, because there was one that Byrne generated when they were doing Dark Side versus Galactus. Byrne, there was a delay on, getting the thing finalized. So Byrne went to DC and it's like, what's going on? It's like, no, it's not us, it's Marvel. So he called up, since he knew Mark Grunwald, he called up Mark Grunwald, said, what's wrong? He's like, oh, there's just some stuff on the Dark Side and that needs to be changed. He's like, Dark Side? You don't even work for DC. Approve it. And they approved it and they got it done. So
interesting. All right. So hey, any more? We wrap this up?
Yes.
No. What's your interest in this? Because you brought this up. This up with me. You brought this up with me. This is the most interest I've seen you in. The most interest I've seen you have. Okay, for an omnibus, no less. So, what's your interest in this?
Well, is it really the omnibus, or it's really one of my favorite stories growing up was the whole X-Men Avengers, X-Men Teen Titans. Of course, Teen Titans was one of my favorite all-time teams, and I just love that whole Phoenix storyline.
I don't think this is this going to be part of that?
Yeah,
it is. It is.
It's part of it.
It is.
I mean, I never read the Avengers one. So I'm definitely interested in reading that one, but I know I reread the Phoenix story more than once, and of course, it had some of my favorite stuff in it. So that's why it's like dear to my heart to get that one again. The amalgam, I'm like, it didn't interest me then, and now I still seem, I guess probably I didn't want to see what Howard the Duck. I'm not a huge Howard the Duck fan, so hey, I send all your comments. Don't bring them in. So that's my issue there.
Yeah, because normally, a comic comes out, Mars was like, oh, you want to talk about this? But You know, it's like good 3, 4 times. Like, hey, they delayed it again. I'm like, what do you mean they delayed it again? It's like, you're actually following this? Oh, okay. So see, okay, there's some comic book guy in all of us.
That's right. There sure is. So hey, if there's nothing else, please subscribe, comment, give us a thumbs up. Spinner Rack,
We're out.
we're out.